it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen. Good evening, my brave wanderers, and welcome once again to the borderlands of fear. I'm your guide tonight, leading you through the dim places where sleep grows thin, shadows breathe a little too deeply, and the things we dismiss as nightmares begin to feel uncomfortably real. So draw the curtains, hush the room, and steady your breath, because what follows drifts between dream and waking, between the life we live and the life taken from us when we aren't looking. Tonight's tale hints at a lifelong haunting, a presence that steals more than peace of mind, a secret bargain buried in a family's past, and a desperate struggle to reclaim the time that has been quietly slipping away. What hunts a person only when they're helpless, and what would you do if you learned the monster wasn't a metaphor, but a debt coming due? Every night for the past 18 years, someone has been sneaking into my bedroom and sleeping next to me. By Mandark. I wouldn't even have found out about this if it hadn't been for my strange fears and paranoia. Well, for as long as I can remember, I've been deathly afraid of sleeping alone. One of my starkest memories of my childhood is lying flat on my bed, feeling too scared to close my eyes, thinking that if I do, someone will appear next to me. The weirdest thing is that I never imagined this monster or whatever harming me in any way. It would always just lay on its side, watching me, with shining, unblinking eyes, and I'd be too afraid to do anything, to move, scream. And this helplessness that I would supposedly feel in an imaginary situation like that pretty much destroyed my childhood. It had gotten so bad that I'd scream and thrash around like a brat well into my teenage years if I was ever forced to sleep alone. Until I was 10 years old, I'd sleep in my parents' bedroom on a separate cot next to their bed. Then, up to my 14th birthday, I'd forced one of my parents to sleep next to me. And, considering that I was raised in India, therapy wasn't even an option. But that didn't mean that my parents didn't try to get me over these fears. They tried sleeping next to me and sneaking out in the middle of the night, or sitting next to my bed and waiting until I fell asleep, but, well, none of it worked. I'd always wake up, sweating and scared out of my wits in the middle of the night whenever they tried this. I'd then immediately scamper off to their bedroom and wake them up by whispering how scared I was, almost giving them a heart attack in the process. If I had to guess, these fears started when I was 8 years old, when my grandma gave me a doll of a clown. This was a clown from the horror TV show Whoa, that my smart-ass dad made me watch around the same time, thinking I was too young to be affected by this stuff. He found out how wrong he was when I started screaming like a banshee when my grandma gave me that doll. And my problems at night started soon after. I couldn't for the life of me close my eyes without thinking someone was going to be there when I turned around. On my 14th birthday, my parents finally put their foot down and forced me to sleep alone. Oh, I cried, I pleaded, tried to justify that I wasn't really a scared little boy and that my fears were irrational, but none of it worked. And so I finally started sleeping alone. And this is when I developed my strange rituals. I'd drink exactly 2 glasses of water every night 2 hours before bedtime, so that I neither felt thirsty nor would I have to get up to pee at night. I'd then make sure all the doors leading outside were closed, draw the curtains and keep the bathroom light switched on. Definitely the most important part of my nighttime rituals was keeping the pillows in a straight line, next to where I slept, to block off space for any monster trying to sleep next to me. It took months before I finally got used to sleeping alone. I wasn't comfortable by any means, but I would at least not be painfully sleepy the next day. Going to college was a godsend. I had a freaking single bed in a tiny room surrounded by hundreds of noisy boys like me. While many others found it irritating, that noise was like a lullaby to me, doing the job of a therapist for me. After graduation, I came back to my parents' house and began preparing to take exams for government jobs. And my rituals started right back, as if nothing had changed. But I was at least sleeping better. It all came to a head when I got a job and moved into my own government-owned house with a double bed at the age of 26, just a couple of weeks ago. As my bedtime approached, I followed my rituals, all of them. I drank my water, closed all the doors, drew the curtains, arranged the pillows, and slept comfortably. Things changed the next morning. When I woke up, I found that my pillows weren't there. They were neatly placed, one on top of the other, on the side table. The most terrifying thing about this was that it wasn't anything new. This had been happening all throughout my childhood. Each morning the pillows I carefully placed next to me would be gone. I'd always assumed that it was one of my parents who'd done this, especially my father, who was an early riser. But I was living alone now, and all my doors were locked when I checked them in the morning. I initially dismissed this, thinking that I might have forgotten to place them next to me last night. I was actually quite happy with this. It looked like I was finally getting over my fears. But this happened again the next day, and the next, and the day after that. All of the fears of my childhood were back, stronger than ever. I was back to staying awake like an owl, only dozing off for a maximum of half an hour or so each night. And the pillows would be gone from the bed every morning. It was hell. Now I wasn't a child anymore, so I didn't just assume that something supernatural was happening here. I tried to act like an adult, to think rationally, even as I was too scared to even tilt my head to the left while lying down on the bed. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe that's how those pillows were moving at night all throughout my life. It wasn't something my parents knew about, though, and instead chastised me for being so cowardly as a grown-ass man. But I needed answers, so I went out and got a video camera and placed it next to my bed. And it was what I found on the video that made me write this. I wasn't sleepwalking. It was my fears, my imaginations, my nightmares. They were real. My knees were trembling as I saw the strange man phase through my bedroom door. He picked up the pillows, neatly placed them on the side table, and lay down next to me. I jumped as he looked directly into the camera with shining, unblinking eyes. I fast-forwarded the video and he stayed there for hours, just looking at the camera, not even moving an inch. Before I woke up, he simply got up and walked away, disappearing through the closed bedroom door. I am beyond fucking terrified. I don't know what's happening, what that thing is, why it's doing this, or even if my life's in danger. I need help. I need this to end if I'm ever going to get a wink of sleep again. Please, guys, help me. Part 2. Well, the first thing I did after posting this on Reddit was checking into the busiest hotel in Ranchi, thinking that if I could recreate the environment of my college, I'd be rid of that thing, at least temporarily, and finally get a good night's sleep. So I moved into the busiest, rowdiest hotel I could find, bang in the middle of the city, after specially asking for a room with a single bed. Well, as I settled in, I went through my phone. After reading your comments, I went out and bought a bag of salt, using it to draw a boundary around my bed. Well, a couple of weeks ago I would have laughed at anyone trying to do something like this, but I was now desperately beyond the point of caring and would do just about anything to make this end. Oh, the me from 2 weeks ago didn't know he was being haunted by something that could walk through walls. A lot of you seem to think this entity haunting me was benign and may even have been protecting me. Well, I had no way of knowing that, and it's not something that I could just assume, considering that the opposite of that was just as likely to be true, and that my life really was in danger. All I really wanted was to sleep without a monster in my bed. Well, some of you suggested that I should try and fuck with the thing. Well, I admit, I laughed at that one, and boy did I need a laugh. Oh, for those of you wondering why I didn't just get someone to sleep next to me or get a dog, it really isn't that easy. I just moved to a new town for my job and I hardly knew anyone here. Inviting them into my bedroom would mean sexual harassment charges. And what would the point be in getting a dog? The barking would wake me up when I wanted to sleep, and besides, I really wasn't in the right headspace to be raising an animal. Next, I tried to send the video I took to my parents and friends. and even thought about uploading it to YouTube. And here is where it gets really freaky. Every single time the video just turned into pure static. I mean, I could watch it on my camera, but every attempt at transferring it to another device resulted in complete failure. I tried playing the video on my camera and recording the camera on my phone, but even that didn't work. The camera's screen seemed to be showing static on the video I was trying to shoot on my phone, even as the video continued to play on the damn camera. Oh, I felt like I was losing my mind. Dejected, I'd almost decided that maybe I was going through a mental breakdown when I heard a knock on my door. Room service. Oh, the look on that man's face when he saw the video sent relief flooding through my body. I wasn't crazy. This was real. I sent him away with a hefty tip and some lame excuse about an experimental horror movie that I was trying to film in my bedroom, and settled in for the night. A faint smell of cigarettes lingered in the stale and musky air of the hotel room as I lay on my back gazing up at the rusting ceiling fan. I was exhausted. Every cell in my body was crying out, wanting me to fall asleep, but it just didn't happen. I was teetering at the edge of consciousness the entire night, frightened out of my mind. I counted sheep, concentrated on the sounds outside, meditated while lying down, but nothing worked. I kept imagining that man waltzing through the walls and sitting down on the couch at the foot of my bed and staring at me through the night. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was imagining it. I didn't think I'd slept for even a second the whole night, but when sunlight came streaming in through the windows, I got out of my bed, and my world turned upside down. The salt line I'd carefully drawn around my bed had been broken in one place. Oh, fuck. It was taunting me. It was letting me know that it could get to me anywhere. And not just that, but that it had been doing this for the last 18 years non-stop. I had never been alone, not even back in college. Why didn't I ever find out that he was there back then? Well, granted, I was a bit of a slob back then, but surely it couldn't have been so bad. The stress and lack of sleep was getting to me at this point, and my head began to pound like it never had before. I trudged downstairs to the hotel canteen and chugged 2 cups of the trashiest coffee and contemplated my next move. What can I do to make this stop? As I ordered bread pakoras, my thoughts kept circling back to that infernal doll my grandmother had given me. Whatever was happening to me had started back when my dad made me watch that show Whoa, and my grandma gave me that doll that exactly looked like the psychotic clown who murdered people by shoving garlands down their throats. Now I'd spoken to my parents, and based off of their reactions, I didn't think they had an inkling of what I was going through. They told me they'd thrown the doll away when I'd had that hysterical tantrum, and have no idea what happened to it. So that left my nanny. Maybe she inadvertently gave me a cursed object. Maybe she even knows what was happening here. I took out my phone and dialed her number. She picked up the 3rd time I called her. Hello? Her weak and raspy voice came from the other side. Who is this? Nani, it's me, Aditya, I replied. Well, she was overjoyed at hearing my voice, and launched into a long, one-sided conversation, asking me how I was doing, then complaining how I never even visit her before I could answer, and then meandering on to some random gossip about her neighbors. Nani, I cut her off. This isn't a social call. I really need your help. Help? What do you need? She asked. Do you remember that doll you gave me when I was 8? Where did you get it? I questioned, and waited a full 30 seconds before she responded. Why are you talking about that? She asked softly. Strange things have been happening to me recently, Nani, and I think that doll has something to do with it. I just need to... Hello? Hello? She cut the call. At some level I was angry she'd hung up on me, but more than anything I was relieved. Relieved that I wasn't shooting in the dark anymore. My suspicions were correct. She knew what was happening. There really might be a way for me to end this. I called her a couple of more times, but she refused to pick up her phone. I knew what I had to do next. I paid my bills at the hotel, called my boss asking for sick leave, made my way to the airport and bought a ticket to Indore. The plane ride worsened my headache, making it impossible for me to sleep. Not that I was even trying to at this point. My grandma sounded scared when I spoke to her, finally convincing me that whatever entity I was dealing with wasn't exactly a friend. I was so exhausted by this point, it was becoming hard for me to differentiate between reality and dreams. I swear to God, I saw him face into and out of the toilet on the plane. My sleep-deprived brain could very well have been hallucinating the whole thing. He appeared in the reflection on the window and might have been sitting next to me, or not. Who the fuck knows? Well, I was just beginning to nod off when the plane touched down. The next thing I remember is getting out of a cab in front of my nanny's house in Ujjain. The entire journey from Indore to Ujjain is just gone from my memory, apart from brief flashes where I was experiencing microsleep and my body would come out mere seconds of sleep later with violent, heart-stopping jerks. Nanny's home is a pretty little bungalow nestled in an affluent corner of Ujjain. She'd lived here with Nana after his retirement and refused to shift even after he died 6 years ago, despite my mother pleading and warning her of potential murderers. Well, old people are stubborn, aren't they? I walked up the gravel path, rang the doorbell, and waited patiently. It took her a while to get to the door, old and frail as she was. "Who is it?" she asked. I imagined she was peering through the peephole, looking at me. Not that it would have been much help to her at this age. "Newspaper bill, madam," I replied. She slowly opened the door, and her eyes widened as she realized who it was. She had no right to be surprised. If she knew the truth of what was happening, she must have known I'd come. "Hi, Nanny." I gave her a quick hug and entered the house before she could react. 15 minutes later, I was sitting on my favorite couch, sipping Nani's tea while she sat in front of me, nervously twiddling her thumbs. I'd spent so many wonderful summer holidays in this place, but I wasn't here for nostalgia's sake. I had a clear objective and I needed to get to the point ASAP. "Please, Nani, tell me everything," I said gently. She fidgeted and it looked like she was going to lie before taking a deep breath and speaking what I was now sure was the truth. 20 years ago, she began, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was pretty bad. Chemotherapy wasn't working and your Nana was going further and further into debt because of the medical costs. I nodded. I'd heard about her illness and eventual recovery. "I had no hopes of survival," she said. "It was hopeless, and I'd accepted that fact. Until... "Until?" I prodded. "I met this man," she replied. "He was in the hospital, in the bed next to me, but I don't think he was a real patient, you know. He had these strange, sparkling eyes, almost like an angel. It was like God had answered my prayers." I clenched my fists at this. "He spoke to me," she continued. "He was very attentive and caring. He listened to me vent for God knows how long, and then..." "Then what?" I asked. "He said he could cure my sickness, or make the pain go away," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How?" I asked. "He offered me a deal," she answered. "What deal?" I asked, shifting forward. She didn't say anything, turning her face away in guilt. "What deal?" I asked again, forcefully this time. He said... She was in tears now, and I was losing my patience. "What did he say?" I shouted. She shrank back in fear and I immediately felt guilty, but before I could apologize, she began speaking again. "A day for a night for a day," she said softly. "What the fuck?" "I don't have time for riddles, Nanny. Please tell me what that means." She was looking terrified now, her eyes darting around like a cornered rat. But I wasn't going to let her retreat from this situation. It means, she began, that he would take a day from my grandson's life and give it to me each night. Or something. I sat there, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This bitch. You stole 18 years of my life, I asked, aghast. I didn't think you'd ever find out, she pleaded pathetically. I put my hand up and she immediately shut up. I then brought this hand further up and began furiously running it through my hair. Fuck. I needed to get out of this place. I was feeling cornered, betrayed, frightened. I don't know. All those nights that I lay scared out of my wits in bed, my soul was being sucked out one day at a time. I walked to the front door, put my hand on the knob before turning to look at my grandmother one last time, who was weeping. You know what? I said. Don't ever talk to me again. You are dead to me. And with that, I slammed the door shut behind me. And I'd regret that later. I walked over to the park outside her house and began to wander aimlessly. She brought that monster into my life. My own fucking grandmother betrayed me. But every time I visited her house, played in her lap, all the food she cooked for me, all this time she knew she was condemning me to this fate. Not only did she take 18 years from my future, she'd also destroyed the 18 fucking years I'd lived through. All that childhood trauma. God, I was so mad I could rip my hair out. But I needed to focus on the situation at hand. This entity was sucking out my soul one day each night. I'd already lost around 18 years of my lifespan to her selfishness. Who knows what that thing is going to do now that I know about its existence? I had to get him to stop feeding off me. But how? Damn. I'd have to go back and ask her if there's a way to end this curse. My dramatic announcement would have to be put on hold for some time. But what if it can't be done? What do I do then? The fact that I was dealing with a supernatural problem convinced me that going about this the conventional way wasn't going to work. I'd been thinking about something and finally decided to go through with it. I called one of my batchmates and arranged for a meeting with someone from the Mahakaleshwar Temple Management Committee. Perks of being a government officer, I guess. I needed help. Maybe I'd find it in religion. If the Shiva temple at Ujjain can't help me, maybe nothing can. I closed my eyes, letting all of my emotions wash over me. It had been a long couple of days. The exhaustion began to set in and I was about to sleep on this park bench when I remembered why I absolutely must not do that and violently shook myself. No, I wasn't letting that bastard take even a second from my lifespan. The next time I sleep, it would only be after I'd rid myself of this monster. Preparing myself to have another conversation with my grandmother, I plodded over back to her house. Alarm bells began ringing as I saw that her front door had been left ajar. Cautiously, I tiptoed my way inside, looking for any signs of trouble. I found my grandmother in the exact same spot I'd left her, sitting in a pool of blood. Her jaw had been ripped from her skull and was hanging loosely over her chest. I could see her tongue hanging out longer than I thought was possible. I would have screamed if I wasn't too terrified to do so. My knees felt weak, and I collapsed on the floor as I kept on staring at her dead body. I became a coughing, sobbing mess as I had a panic attack right next to my dead grandmother. Oh, it wasn't pretty. Terrified at the sight in front of me, but too scared to move away, I stayed on my knees, panting and wheezing. Soon I found myself crawling over to her body. To do what? I don't know. I felt an overwhelming surge of guilt. Why? I don't know. I just wished I could take it back, wished that this nightmare would end. Even after everything that had happened, I still wasn't prepared for what happened next. Her hand shot up and grabbed me by the throat, pulling me in close to her. My eyes widened in fear and I began to thrash around violently to get myself free, but she held on with monstrous strength. pupils in her eyes jumped around at an unnatural speed as she continued to pull me in closer. I started to fight harder to get free, but to no avail. I felt her breath on my ear, and then I saw her unhinged jaw begin to move as I heard this malicious whisper right next to my ear. A day for a night for a day. Part 3. I woke up to the cold, hard floor digging into my back. Slowly blinking my eyes open, I looked around at my surroundings. My Nani's house. The darkness and the annoying sound of crickets made me realize I'd been out for a while. But for how long had I been asleep? As I gingerly started to get up using my elbows and taking the support of my favorite couch, all the memories of the past few hours came flooding back, and I fell back down. Good God. Did all of that really happen? I spun my head around to look at the spot where I'd found the dead body of my grandmother. There was nothing there. No Nani, no blood, nothing except for a forlorn, dusty chair. Was any of that real, or had I dreamt it all up? And if it was just a dream and the monster was just messing with my head, then where was my grandma right now? I dragged myself up to the couch, sitting in relief as my back rested against something comfortable after hours. My left knee was killing me, and I don't even know how I'd injured the damn thing. After resting for about a minute, I got up and began looking for Nani. I checked each and every room in the house, twice, but there was no sign of her. Things just kept getting more and more confusing. I was feeling so lost and helpless. My last conversation with Nani kept on playing inside my head over and over. The extent of her betrayal was unbelievable, yes, but try as I might, I couldn't shake off this feeling of guilt over treating her so badly in what turned out to be her last moments. I guess I am just fucked in the head. As I shifted on the couch to move into a more comfortable position, my phone rubbed against my thigh, and I suddenly remembered that I'd been making plans to visit Mahakaleshwar temple to get help with this situation. Vishal, my batchmate, had texted me to inform me that I'd a meeting with someone from the temple management committee at 8:30 in the morning, which was, 5 hours from now. Damn, I slept uninterrupted for over 7 hours. It wouldn't be appropriate to visit a temple covered in grime and smelling like shit, so I decided to take a bath, as weird as it was to be doing so in this house after, everything. I made my way over to the bathroom attached to the guest bedroom and switched on the water heater. These moments of quiet inactivity in between all the insanity that my life had become were the hardest to deal with. This was when I'd begin to question my sanity, try and process emotions, just nerve-wracking stuff. I'd much rather deal with a soul-sucking demon. I wondered what I'd tell my mum about what had happened to her mother. Should I say I was never here, or concoct some other bullshit? Why the fuck was my knee hurting so much? After roughly 10 minutes or so, I stripped down to my boxers and walked into the bathroom. Turning on the tap for the hot water, I turned around to get a good look at my reflection, and what I saw chilled me to the bone. Wrinkles marred my once youthful-looking face. My skin had turned dry and my hair was a disgusting shade of salt and pepper, with much more salt than pepper. It was as if, I had aged by 25 years. I looked like a middle-aged man in his mid-50s. Holy fuck. I furiously rubbed the mirror, as if that would wash away all the years that I'd aged. I screamed in frustration and anger. That thing had stolen even more of my years in the last few hours, and it was now actually letting me feel the after effects of its greed, as if to taunt me that it could take anything it wanted and I could do nothing about it. My stomach was a swirling pit of murderous loathing. I could rip that bastard apart with my bare hands, and I will, soon enough. About 4.5 hours later, after a bath and a good meal, I was standing outside the majestic Mahakaleshwar temple. The Basam Arti had finished a couple of hours ago, so there wasn't as much of a crowd as there would have been, and I easily found my friend Vishal. "Hi," I greeted him as I walked up close to him. He looked confused. "It's me, Aditya," I added. He looked even more confused at that, but soon began to recognize me, and his eyes widened in shock. "Yeah, I know. It's why I'm here," I said before he could reply. "Dude, how?" he asked, his voice low as if he couldn't believe what was going on. "I'll tell you everything. Let's just meet whoever we came to meet," I said. We entered the temple premises, but instead of going to the shrine itself, turned and started to walk towards the office buildings, past the mass of people. Devotees thronged the temple all throughout the day, so keep in mind that when I say there wasn't much of a crowd, I do mean by Indian standards. Vishal kept looking over his shoulders at his suddenly aged friend. "Buddy, you have no idea," I thought. We were met by a shirtless man in a saffron dhoti, who took us to one of the bigger offices in the building. I guess he's one of the main pujaris here, based off of the respect the others were giving him. Well, he asked us to sit down and offered us water, which we gratefully accepted. Vishal introduced me as his batchmate, and I closely watched the pujari for his reaction. He didn't look all that shocked, which was a relief. "So, how can I help you, Aditya?" he asked. I didn't say anything, just pulled out my camera from my bag and showed him that video. Vishal jumped up and walked over to the pujari's side to get a better look. We watched the video in silence, Vishal showing much more emotion on his face than the pujari. "Is this real?" Vishal asked after the video ended. "Is this real?" I replied, pointing at my face, and he solemnly nodded. "Wow, so this isn't like video editing or something?" he asked, amazed. I pointed at my face again. "Does this look like—" "Okay," he cut me off. "I get it already. Wow." "Listen, Aditya," the pujari said. "We get a lot of requests about things like this. Most of them are just superstitious people who've misdiagnosed a mental illness. But this is something else." "Can you help me?" I asked hopefully. "No, I can't." He shook his head. "Let's just say it's not my area of expertise." I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I thought I was moving forward, but here I was back to square one. I felt the weight of all 50-plus years of my life on my chest. "But," the priest added, "I know someone who can. Mahakal must be on your side because that someone happens to be here today. Let me call him. Please, wait here." Hope began to build up inside me again, but I controlled it. There was no guarantee that this person could help me. No sense in getting my hopes up and then just getting them dashed again. Vishal started pestering me about my situation, but I told him to wait. I said I'll tell him when the pujari comes back. No sense in recounting my trauma again and again. We sat in an awkward silence, with Vishal occasionally glancing at me in wonder, for about 15 minutes before the pujari walked back in with another man behind him. This guy was younger than me, younger than my 26-year-old self. Dressed in green kurta and jeans, with a tattoo of a trident piercing a crescent moon smack dab in the middle of his forehead. He looked like an edgy college student who worshipped Shiva only because it was edgy, and probably even was, but he certainly didn't look like the kind of man who'd be of assistance to me. Well, then again, looks can be deceiving. He shook my hand, pulled a chair and sat down next to us. "This is Rocky," Pujari said. "At least that's what he's known as. He has some experience in this field." Rocky nodded. "So, what's wrong?" he asked. I showed him the video. "Does this look like anyone you know?" he asked after watching it. "What? No," I replied. He sighed. "So, what happened after this video? How did you end up like this?" He pointed at me. I launched into my story. I told them everything that had happened to me, from the doll to the nighttime visits to last night's incident with Nani. "Your Nani is dead?" Vishal asked, amazed. "Yes, maybe, I don't know," I answered truthfully. Maybe I dreamt it all up and he kidnapped her or something. Verbalizing this makes me sound like a lunatic. Wow, Vishal said. So, can you help me? I asked Rocky. No, he answered. Oh, well, fuck. To be precise, no one can, he added, his brow furrowed, making the trident shift in a bizarre way. I know what this thing is. See, when I first saw the video, I thought it was a skinwalker because of the eyes. No, I hoped it was a skinwalker, because that we can at least deal with. That has weaknesses we can exploit, but then you told me about your grandmother. This is a pishach. Well, at least I knew now what was haunting me. That's progress. A pishach has no weaknesses, Rocky continued. It's a very powerful, immortal creature. It feeds off the souls of its victims, like a vampire, if you will. He rubbed his trident. There are only a handful of them that we know of. The last one our people encountered was back during the emergency days. Nothing works on this thing. We can't kill it, we can only slow it down. How? I asked softly. By eliminating its food source and containing it, he replied in a matter-of-fact way. Excuse me? I exclaimed. You wanted to know how to do it? I'm telling you, Rocky pointed out. As long as it has people it can feed off of, it'll continue to find idiots like your grandmother to manipulate and fatten itself. Rocky, you're being rude, the Pujari chastised him. So, you can't do anything? Vishal asked. I didn't say I won't do anything, Rocky said. Look, all I'm saying is, we can try to stop this thing, but you have to be aware of the fact you'll probably not make it out of this alive. I shuddered, but nodded. How do we go about this? I asked. We find out where it lives and attack it there, Rocky answered. See, what do you do when you're starving? I shook my head, not knowing where he was going with this. You stretch out your food supplies, he continued, and I'm guessing that's what he's doing to your nanny or any other poor suckers it managed to ensnare in his traps in the past. If it has so many people, why does it need me? I asked. Well, you're alive, fully so. That's why, he replied. You think there are other people like me being slowly killed by him? I wondered. I doubt it. Your video shows that it usually takes him the better part of a night to feed. I guess it's slow because he expends energy to feed as well, Rocky said. So, how do we find out where he lives? I asked. We put you to sleep, wait for him to come feed on you, and track him back to his home, he said with a straight face. No, I protested. I can't fall asleep again. Look what happened to me the last time I slept. There's no way I'll survive it again. I'll be close by, Rocky said. I'll wake you up before he can take too much of your life. What if you don't get to me on time? I asked. I warned you, this was risky, Rocky replied. What did you think would happen here? We'd chant some mantras and give you a magical weapon to slay the monster? It doesn't work that way. You have to make sacrifices. I grit my teeth, but nodded, albeit indignantly. We decided to put our plan into motion in the evening, giving Rocky time to face some preparations. I thanked the Pujari and said my goodbyes to Vishal, though he protested, but I wasn't having any of it. He was getting married in less than a month, and there's no way I would have taken his death on my conscience. He finally relented after I agreed to keep in touch and to call him if I needed anything. I also spoke to my parents, telling them that everything was okay and that the phone conversations we'd had about the dolls were nothing important. I've never been a very religious man, always sitting on the fence between theism and atheism, but I decided to spend the day visiting various religious places in our city anyway, having my lunch at the local Gurudwara. It felt a lot like I was wrapping up my business in this world and preparing to die, but regardless, I was a lot calmer by the time evening rolled on, and as I checked into one of the seedier hotels that Rocky had picked, I felt somewhat at peace. Why this place? I asked. The police will be a distraction at this point, he said. It's better to choose a place they won't quickly visit. Well, As we had our dinner, we went over the modalities of the plan. We weren't going to follow him in his car all the way back to his place. We just wanted the number plates. Those could then be used to find out what identities he was using, properties registered to that name, and to raid those properties all at once and blow them up. It was risky, yes, but we couldn't let him know we were planning on doing something as balls out as invading his home. He could shift his base at the slightest whiff of danger, and then I'd be fucked. I marveled at the scale of it all. How could this young man be sitting in front of me, possibly be running or be a part of something capable of pulling this off? But I didn't want to bite the hand that was going to feed me, so I wisely kept my mouth shut. After dinner, I made my way to my room, casually looking for where the cameras were hidden. Rocky caught me doing that and told me to stop. We parted ways in front of my room. He was staying in the room next to me, and assured me he would immediately jump in to help if he saw anything strange on the camera, like a hungry pishach. As there I was again, flat on my back, looking up at another ancient ceiling fan, waiting to fall asleep. I swear to God, if I survived this, beds would end up becoming PTSD triggers for me. Of course, it took me a long time to fall asleep. That old stereotype of old people being quick sleepers wasn't as true for me yet. Well, I wondered if I'd even wake up, and hoped that Rocky would get revenge for me if I didn't. Such morbid thoughts were swirling around in my head when I slowly drifted off to sleep. With some trashy Kumar Sanu song being played at full volume on speakers that I didn't even notice that woke me up. Feeling extremely groggy, I opened my eyes to see that face again, just inches from mine. His mouth was turned into this vicious snarl, shining eyes glaring daggers at me, trying to pierce my very soul. Oh, and his breath was foul. It smelled like death. I froze in fear, not knowing what to do. He brought out one of his long, clawed hands and began choking me. He was furious. Did he figure out what we were planning, or was it just anger at having his meal interrupted? I thrashed around, clawing at his arms, but he held on. I heard banging on the door. It sounded like Rocky was trying to force his way in. A loud bang later, and the door gave in, and the light from the hallway outside came pouring in. Rocky walked in with a shotgun that he aimed at the pishach. The monster turned around and snarled at my rescuer. Rocky opened fire, the shotgun shells passing harmlessly through the pishach's body and slamming into the wall behind him. I coughed as air rushed into my lungs. The pishach gave me one last look and casually just walked into and out of one of the side walls, maintaining eye contact with Rocky, who was carefully following his each and every movement. "You okay?" Rocky asked after a good 30 seconds. "Yeah," I said. "A little shaken, but fine. How long was I out?" 25 minutes. I set off the alarm as soon as I saw him walk in," he replied. "Thank you," I said gratefully. "Did we get the number plates?" Rocky nodded. I felt so goddamn happy. Finally, I put that fucker on the back foot for the first time. Well, next time I see you, it's going to be me walking into the bedroom, bitch. Part 4. I did not want to take this job. Coming back after dealing with a particularly nasty daitya in Raipur, I was really looking forward to a break, something I hadn't had in over a year, when Guruji called me for another job. I knew this was going to be trouble as soon as I saw the video, and it only became worse when I realized I was dealing with a goddamn pishach. Oh, at some level I felt sorry for the poor bastard sitting in front of me. Losing over half of your life in the span of a few days is not something anyone should go through. But when I did sympathize with him, I was not an emotional fool. I was pragmatic enough to understand that he'd most likely die trying to take this monster down. Believe me, having this type of clarity in this line of work can mean the difference between your own life and death. So while some of you may think I'm an asshole, I don't care in the least bit, as long as my work is done. "So, why Ranchi then?" he asked with a confused expression on his face. "It makes the most sense," I replied. Of the 3 properties we traced to your sleep time, buddy, this was the most recent purchase. It's a farmhouse in the ass end of nowhere, a perfect hiding spot, and happens to be near the same city where you started your job. But we'll be hitting all 3, he asked, and I nodded. And we'll need you to go back to your house in Ranchi, I said. That way, we'll make him go back to his base and hit him there. So, I'm acting as bait. Again. He was offended, but also a little scared. Yes, I nodded. But you won't be sleeping this time, so rest assured you won't have to worry about losing any more years. Aditya didn't look convinced. That didn't surprise me at all. He didn't have a lot of years, and one more slip and the Pishach would suck the life right out of him. One more thing, I continued. Keep in mind that when we're raiding this hideout, you'll be a threat to him and not just food. He won't go easy on you this time. But he will avoid killing you, and that's something I won't hesitate to use to my advantage. He was going easy on me all this time, he asked mockingly. Always with the sarcasm. Asshole. Well, you're about to find out, aren't you? I replied sweetly. Here, take this, I said, handing him a pill. What's this? He questioned. Modafinil, I replied. Take this at around 2 to 3 a.m. It'll keep you awake. A few hours later, Aditya left for Indore, where he would take a flight to Ranchi, and I'd follow him on the next plane. We wanted to give this illusion to the Pishach that our partnership had ended and that Aditya was going back after having given up trying to fight. Who knows how effective our little ruse will be? We had to take the chance, though. If there was even the slightest possibility that it would improve our chances, well, we had to do it. Besides, I had a couple of things to take care of in the meantime. I made some phone calls and arranged for some weapons to be made available in Ranchi itself. Transporting guns from here would have taken too long and would be too risky with the government breathing down hard on the necks of any smugglers. I then arranged for some kidnappers and such from the surrounding area. Yep, you heard that right. Kidnappers, gangsters, so on. Our people regularly work with criminal elements and use them as meat shields against monsters. Keeps us safe, saves the lives of innocent people, weakens the monsters, and cleans our streets at the same time. They're never told what exactly they're attacking, and most die in the process. Questionable from an ethical standpoint, especially if you're a communist, but also highly efficient. The sky was a pale shade of blue when my plane landed in Ranchi. Delhi's poisonous smog had shifted east and made its way here, keeping visibility low. I was just glad my flight hadn't been delayed. That would have been a big fucking problem. I had a light breakfast at the airport itself and then took a cab to Aditya's house, where I found him outside, looking exasperated as he tried to reason with the 30-odd men who were camped outside. He threw his hands up in the air when he saw me. "Who the fuck are these people?" he demanded. "They wouldn't say anything at all." "Friends," I replied. "Friends." His brow furrowed in suspicion. I nodded and walked over to speak to my contact here. Aditya buzzed around me like an aging bee, pestering me with questions while I inspected my weapons. I held up a 9mm pistol. "You know how to use this?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "They taught us the basics at the academy." "All right then," I said, looking at our little band. "Let's go." It took us over an hour to reach the farmhouse, with Aditya staying silent the entire ride, probably contemplating his life and probable death. I was fine with that. The fewer distractions before a job, the better. The fog had cleared by the time we reached the Pishach's base, a quaint little farmhouse that could serve as a rich family's vacation home in happier times. Now it was hiding the worst sort of nightmares known to man. We parked our car some distance from the building, trying to avoid being seen. I got out of the car, put the sling of my rifle around my shoulder, and went to speak to my contact, with Aditya staying on my heels. My contact, a man named Lucky, was much like me, early 20s with a tattoo of the trident and crescent on his forehead. We're ready, I told him. Send them in. He nodded and barked some orders at the low-life criminals who set off running towards the house, armed with their 303s. Lucky then came jogging back and shook my hand. All yours now, he said. I'm off. And with that he got in his car and left. Wait, Aditya said. Won't we need that car? How are we going to fit that many people in the other cars? I didn't say anything and continued to focus on the farmhouse. They were at the front door now and my heart was starting to race. It would start any second now. Oh no, Aditya spoke from beside me. You don't expect them to make it out of this alive, do you? Holy shit. I shushed him and we waited in silence as our team entered the building. A couple of tense minutes passed and nothing happened as our criminal friends searched the building. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe our plan didn't work and the Pishach was smarter than we thought and chose not to take the bait. If not here, I hoped he was at the other two sites, because if not, I had no idea how to proceed from there on. Would we have to ask Aditya to sleep again? Then what? Attack him the moment he comes to feet? Oh, too risky. Luckily, my main chain of thoughts were cut off by loud, painful screaming coming from inside the farmhouse. Oh shit, Aditya whispered nervously. My hunch was correct. That arrogant bastard was here. He probably thought he could take us all out at his home turf. Gunshots followed as the criminals started to battle the Pishach. I imagined that they were in for a heck of a surprise. They thought they were attacking some hapless middle-aged businessman and not a soul-sucking demon from hell. A loud explosion ripped through the air, shaking the earth as shards of glass broke out from one of the windows and bright orange flames leapt into the air, licking at the bright sunny sky. More screaming followed. All right, I said, tapping Aditya on his arm. Let's go. Are you fucking crazy? He looked at me wild-eyed. You want to go into the middle of all that? I began moving towards the building, keeping my gun on my shoulder and a finger next to the trigger. I heard Aditya shuffling behind me, and in seconds he was close to me. You think they got him? He whispered. I didn't give him an answer, and I don't think he expected one either. We saw one of the criminals come tumbling outside, covered in blood, looking shell-shocked. The next second he was pulled back inside with terrifying speed, and Aditya yelped from behind me. I thought he'd be weaker in the day, he whispered. Shut the fuck up, I admonished him. Sorry, I talk when I'm nervous, he blabbered. Shut up anyway, I repeated. A terrifying silence had descended on the area by the time we reached the door, our breathing and the slight crunch of the gravel underneath our shoes being the only sound we could hear. I began sweating. Surely they couldn't all have been taken out this quickly. Had I underestimated his strength? Regardless, we had come too far to turn back now. I slowly walked inside the open door and took in my surroundings. Bullet holes in the walls, blood splattered everywhere, tables and chairs thrown around, and heat coming in waves from one of the rooms in the back that had witnessed an explosion. The house looked like a war zone. But the most disturbing thing here were the bodies. It was a ghastly scene with limbs strewn here and there and the stench of burnt flesh heavy in the air. I walked straight ahead, carefully clearing every room one after the other. But I found no sign of the Pishach. I was wondering where he'd run off to when I heard Aditya calling for me. Hey, check this out. His voice was coming from back in the living room. One of them's alive. Impossible. I'd just come from there and hadn't seen any sign of movement. Well, I quickly made my way back and found him hunched over one of the wounded criminals, who was twitching wildly. Step back, Aditya, I warned him. You're too close. Before he could move away, the wounded man snarled and bit Aditya's left hand with all his might, making him scream. I tried to get a shot off, but didn't have a clear line of sight, so I moved in closer. Aditya's screaming got louder as the man bit harder, drawing blood and piercing flesh. There was a sickening crunch as he bit so hard that Aditya's bone shattered, making me afraid that he'd pass out. The man shook his head wildly, like a starving dog with a juicy bone, trying to bite the hand clean off, and it looked like he was succeeding. I moved in, took out my pistol, and shot the rabid monster in the head. Once, twice. But he held on with unnatural strength, refusing to let go. Aditya's hand now hung loosely from his wrist, and he screamed even harder. Not knowing what else to do, I took out my knife and swung it with all my might, slicing Aditya's hand clean off, and then shoved him aside before emptying my gun inside the monster's head. Well, that thing finally stopped moving, and I sighed in relief. I quickly moved over to Aditya's side and cauterized his wound. It was a miracle he was still conscious. Oh, what a tough bastard. He was wincing in pain, but seemed otherwise fine. I made him sit on one of the many bullet-riddled chairs. After that, I picked up a shotgun lying on the floor and went around destroying the brains of the criminals lying dead at various places around the house. I wasn't going to give the Pishach another chance at pulling something like this again. Aditya had tied a belt around his stump by the time I circled back to him. Like I said, tough. I was becoming impressed with him. "You find him?" he asked, his teeth gritting in rage and pain. I shook my head. I'd searched every nook and cranny of this place, but he wasn't there. There was only one place he could be. "There must be a basement or something," Aditya suggested. "There's a trapdoor outside the kitchen. It's the only place I haven't looked," I said. "Okay," he grunted. "Let's go." "You okay? You still want to come?" I asked. His eyes hardened, and I knew that was the only answer I was going to get from him. I wrenched the trapdoor open and saw that a rickety old ladder led down a dimly lit path. At least it wasn't completely dark, I mused as I began my descent. After reaching the tile floor, I helped Aditya climb down as well. This is it, I thought, the final stage. The basement was big, much bigger than I expected. Its total floor area must have been more than the house it was sitting under. "Whoa," Aditya whispered as he took in the sight in front of him. Rows upon rows of hospital beds lay in front of us, being illuminated by lamps hanging over them intermittently. On these beds were the shriveled-up husks of the Pishach's past victims that he was forcibly keeping alive to feed off of. I don't know how much energy they gave him, but they certainly made for a disturbing sight with tubes sticking out of their decaying bodies. If we destroyed these, it'll be pretty much game over. "Do you think my nanny is here too?" Aditya asked. I looked at him. Tears were running down his tired face. "Listen," I said. "You can't empathize with these people. They aren't alive, you understand. This isn't even euthanasia. Euthanasia might have grey areas, but this doesn't." He nodded. I brought up my rifle and began killing those who'd been tortured by this thing for possibly hundreds of years. The muzzle of my gun flashed as more and more of his food supply was erased. I stopped when I heard a furious growling. "Where is he?" Aditya asked. "Where are you?" he shouted. I heard rustling from above us and looked up and saw a pair of shining eyes gazing down at me from the darkness above. I pulled the trigger, but my bullet sailed harmlessly through his body and smashed into the ceiling as he leapt down at me and began slashing away with his vicious claws, slicing away huge chunks of my flesh. I tried to fight him off, but he was much stronger than I was, and I was slowly losing. He bit a chunk off my shoulder when Aditya wobbled over, aiming a solid kick at the ribs of this fucker. But his leg just passed through the Pishach's body, and he slipped, falling hard on his ass. Pishach snarled and growled and made his way over to its favorite meal, giving me some time to breathe. I was losing far too much blood, far too quickly. We needed to end this fast. I tried to get up, but my head began to swim and I fell down to the floor. My vision became blurry, and I started blinking furiously to clear it. I think I heard a loud thunk, and with my hazy vision saw that Aditya had been struck on the head with some sort of blunt object and was now knocked out. Pishach was hunched over him, preparing to suck the life out of him. Fuck. If he succeeds, he'll regain whatever energy we'd worked so hard to drain from him, and I would most certainly die here. There was only one thing I could do in this situation. With trembling hands, I searched for my pistol. The Pishach began to suck. I really needed to fucking hurry. My heart jumped in jubilation as my hand fell on my gun. Yes, I can still do this. I took that gun and aimed it at Aditya's head. My vision was still hazy. My hands were trembling. I was terrified that I'd miss. If I didn't land a perfect hit, that Pishach would come over to finish me off and then go back to its meal. Taking a deep breath, I pulled the trigger. The shot rang so loudly my ears began to ring, but I knew I'd connected because the Pishach screamed in murderous rage. It wasn't over. I might have stopped him from rejuvenating himself, but I still hadn't taken him down. He turned his wrathful gaze at me and walked over, fully intent on finishing me off. I aimed the gun at him and pulled the trigger. My heart sank as the gun clicked, but no bullet shot out. This is it. This is how I was going to die, doing a job I didn't want to take with no one in this world to mourn my death. But I wasn't going to go out without a struggle. That just wasn't who I was. I began to fight him off with everything I had, though I knew I was going to lose. I don't really know whether it was my bullet that woke him up, or if it was just his insane willpower. At the time that I thought I'd killed Aditya, my bullet had merely hit him on the arm, from which I'd separated a hand earlier. He got up on his feet and started to walk towards us, baseball bat in his hand, while I continued to struggle against the Pishach. Aditya stood over us, took a deep breath, and swung the bat with all his fucking might. Our efforts at tiring the monster out finally succeeded as the bat connected with a satisfying crunch. But Aditya didn't stop. He continued to swing his mighty hammer of death again and again and again, until the Pishach's head was nothing but a gooey mess. Aditya wobbled on his feet, but steadied himself, and then bent towards me. I thought he was going to help me up, but no. He picked up my rifle, aimed it at the Pishach's body, and emptied the clip one bullet at a time. He then began kicking that thing's body, pushing himself beyond the point of exhaustion. "Stop," I coughed. "It's over. He's dead." 20 minutes later, Aditya was sitting on the hood of my car, beaten, shot, mutilated, but still somehow conscious, while I lifted his grandmother's body into the trunk. His face was even more worn now. He easily looked like he was in his late 50s. "So, what are you going to do with him?" he asked, pointing at the rucksack containing the remains of the Pishach. "Burn it," I replied. "Then bury the ashes under a ton of cement." He nodded. Oh, he looked old, but relieved, as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders, which of course it had. "How are you perfectly fine?" he asked. "I saw you. He hurt you worse than me, and yet here you are, walking around like nothing happened." I didn't say anything. "How did you cauterize my wound?" he asked, pointing to his stump. "Sure, keep your fucking secrets," he muttered. "Tried to kill me, but won't even tell me the truth." "So, what are you going to do now?" I asked. "Go back to your old life?" He shook his head. "I can't. There's no way to reasonably explain this." "Late onset of progeria?" I suggested. He laughed bitterly. "No," he said. "I can't let my parents see me like this. No parent should have to watch a child die, least of all in this manner. I need a clean break." An idea began to form in my head. "Hey," I said, "why not come and work with us?" "Seriously?" he laughed. "My body can't handle any more of this." "Not field work," I corrected him. "We need help with the office, the administrative work will give you a new identity, and give your old self a clean death. Hope began to form in his eyes. You don't have to say yes now, I assured him. Think about it while you recuperate. We both turned our heads as we saw a car approaching us. It was an ambulance owned by someone our people had helped in the past. Oh, thank God, I said. I really need to rest. He nodded. Can't wait to be back in a bed, I added. Fuck that, Aditya exclaimed. I'm never going anywhere near a bed again for the rest of my life, however short it might be. And with that, we both began to laugh.
You know what, sometimes I just can't think of anything to say at the end of these stories, really can't. And then tonight was going to be one of those, and I realised, actually, I think today is the 10th anniversary setting up the YouTube channel. I didn't put a video out immediately, but I think it was either today or tomorrow, 10 years ago, that I said, right, I'm going to try this, see how it goes. And to be honest, it hasn't gone too badly, has it? 10 years and still going strong. Well, still going, let me put it that way. Anyway, yeah, so glad to have made it this far. Hope you're all enjoying the stories all these years later. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening for all this time. And here's to another 10 years, eh? Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.